Good afternoon, everyone. It's 5 o'clock on October 3rd, and we will call this County Board of Supervisors to order. And at this time, if everybody will please stand, we will have an invocation by Tim Sackett from Transport of Christ.
Good evening, and thank you once again for allowing the ministers of the area to come and bring prayer. And nothing can be more grieving today than the tragedy in Las Vegas, but Jesus said something about the world seeks peace and more peace and safety, and instead sudden destruction comes. And his judgment is slow, but it is final. And we still continue to pray for safety and security, even though they are vulnerable. The Bible says that a haughty spirit goes before a fall, and pride goes before destruction. And as many times as our nation has seen these tragedies, we've recovered enough to turn our sorrow into laughter, but only for a moment, when sorrow comes back again and again and again. But God wrote a passage in the Old Testament that says, when the nations fall, all of our sorrow will turn to joy and laughter, and that will be final. I hope that we can see peace and safety and laughter and joy in this world. But we have to be careful. We have to be humble enough to realize that it comes only for a moment. And all of us should be ready. Let's pray. Father God in heaven, the place we live in St. Croix County feels quite safe. It seems as though the people in this room and all of the other city councils, the law enforcement, the schools, the churches, the families, they work in unison to provide prosperity, friendliness, and cheer in the St. Croix Valley. And we're thankful for the work that's done in this room. We're thankful for the people and the plans that are made. And we pray that we would continue to live with the kind of safety and security and the hope that we have living here. But help us to be extremely cautious. Help our law enforcement people to be very diligent, that all of this can be just yet for a moment. So, Lord, as we pray about our nation and the surrounding area, including Mexico and Puerto Rico and many, many places beyond, we seek a time when safety and security and laughter can remain. But until Jesus comes, we know that we are vulnerable to all of the destruction and chaos, the evil that's here. So we're just praying, Lord, that the time will come when Jesus made a promise and that he will return and that all of our sorrow will permanently turn to laughter. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Join me in a pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a roll call, Cindy. And everybody, here we have one vacancy, otherwise everyone's here. Thank you. At this time, we're open for public comment for items on and off the agenda. And I have a few people here that have signed up, so I'll call you forward. John Strom, please.
My name is John Strom. I live in the town of Forest, St. Croix County, Wisconsin. I would just like to offer up my thanks and compliment all the members supervisors, staff, and citizens that were working on the water study group. I hope the recommendations will include all of St. Croix County, not just Emerald. I hope that the recommendations actually include more than just CAFO operations. And I hope that we're able to protect our very precious water. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Virginia Drath, please.
Good evening. My name is Virginia Drath, and I live in Emerald Township. I'm here this evening to ask for your support for the Ground and Surface Water Quality Committee recommendations. 9 months of so much information from invited speakers and all of you that were on the committee has been interesting and informative, and thank you for your participation. Kim and I are having very interesting and disturbing stories from the grassroots folks in our township the past year and a half. This is regarding their water quality. No one person or organization can protect our environment alone. We all have a role in this effort and a skin in the game. All we are asking for is safe water, clean air, fair rules, and a level playing field. Some folks are concerned about new rules and how they might be affected by them. I get that. Personally, I haven't heard or read about any CAFOs saying they are concerned or sorry for the unintended consequences they have imposed on our communities. Please share with other counties what this county is going through regarding water quality and all the issues. Working together will benefit the whole state of Wisconsin and all the counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. The next person I have here is Kim Dupree.
Thank you, Kim Dupree, with Emerald Township. Again, thank you to Pat and Scott and Fred and Deb and Ellen and all the staff for all the hard work they did on the groundwater recommendations, and the study group and the board members who all served on that. I really appreciate your time. We learned a lot. It was a lot of information to digest. But I just wanted to share a little story from Emerald to hopefully help you justify supporting these recommendations. We've been hearing about a cluster of 8 families in our township that all found E. coli in their wells. And so I talked with some of the families, and then I also talked with the DNR. And I got an open records request in, and I have an email here from July 14th from Stacy Steinke, who is the private water supply specialist, and this is to her supervisors. She was relaying the story of what's been going on in Emerald. And this is just one family story, but this was kind of the family that started the ball rolling. She said she had contacted the homeowner after they had contacted her with their well test results. They were prompted to test their well in June of 2017 after their daughter and son-in-law both suffered bad stomach bugs and other illnesses while staying with them. They did their initial well test and it was chloroform positive. The second one was E. coli positive. They shocked and chlorinated the well, and then they got a safe result. They have been sampling their well every year for 20 years and never had an issue with chloroform or E. coli. They were not even aware of the most recent manure spill in Emerald because they lived outside of the 2-mile radius that the notices from the county went out to all the landowners within 2 miles. Their daughter found some recent news articles and sent them to them, and that's what prompted them even to test their well again. And the scary part about all this, there was no change in their odor, their color of the water. There was no issues with the well itself. There was no changes to their water system. They hadn't noticed anything different or unusual in their neighborhood. So, and that's the scary part, that you don't know if your water's contaminated or not. And the request was to go and get some advanced testing so we could figure out where this came from. And the Madison office denied that request because it didn't fit their protocol. I got the protocol. Sure looks like it fits to me when it says you need confirm the presence of fecal bacteria in a lab analysis. That's one of the protocols. And so I'm following up with more information because they were supposed to document this in writing and find out why exactly they denied. So even if this wasn't due to the spill, if this was due to something else in the neighborhood, I think that'd be interesting information to have so that we could prevent what's going on. And so I ask you to please support these recommendations. They're a start. They're not the end game. This is a journey, not a destination. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. The next person, Laverne Hoytum. Okay. Okay, thank you.
He wants to read.
What?
He has a comment that you can read.
Oh, the comment wrote down here was, let's do what is necessary to protect our water supply. If we screw this up, we are doomed. That's your comment? Okay, thank you. Chris Marshall?
Good evening, I'm Chris Marshall, I'm a resident of St. Joseph. I came before you this evening to educate you on your choices for District 2 position. I've had an ongoing conflict with Mrs. Lee and Mr. Lee for approximately 5 years. Mr. Abbott was on the jury of the case. The case number was 16-CV-68. I just wanted to make the board aware that it's a conflict of interest to have Mrs. Lee represent District 2 with the people that are in that district. I feel it's a concern. She has no interest in small business as far as I'm concerned. I feel that if she's appointed that position, her sole agenda will be to make my life miserable, make my family's life miserable as they have done. That's why I had a case against them. I would like you to think about that and look into it. Once again, I feel it's a conflict of interest to be representing District 2. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're still open for comments on or off the agenda. Does there anybody else have any comments they want to make? We're still open for comments on or off the agenda. One more time, we're still open for comments on or off the agenda. Not seeing any, we'll move forward then. Thank you. This time we have our consent agenda. The minutes from previous meetings, September 5th. The date of our next meeting is November 7th. And that's it on there. Do I have a motion to approve? Supervisor Babbitt, second. Supervisor Brinkman. Any discussion? If no discussion. We have a motion in a second, so we'll vote on that. That's all yeses. Thank you. We don't have any presentations or recognitions, so we'll move on to appointments. And that's appointment for County Supervisor for District 2. And the first person I brought forward for that is Jessica Lee, if she can step forward. And she'll give her.
Good evening. So I'm Jessica Lee. I'm from St. Joseph Township. I've been a long-term resident. I've been there for 20 years. I chose to invest in St. Croix County. I was not born and raised here. I built my home when I was 25, got married when I was 26, Had two boys, 27, when I was 27 and 29. They are now sophomores and seniors respectively at Somerset High. I've definitely invested in my community over the years, but I've been really deliberate in my choices over the years. Hopefully that is transparent. I am a fiscal conservative, interested in running for the seat for District 2, and I do take my responsibilities very seriously, weighing the needs and the wants, as we all have to do in our own homes, to ensure that choices that we make today don't burden our past and future generations. Professionally, I am a 25-year veteran. I'll be celebrating my 25th service anniversary with Wells Fargo. I lead the operations incident management team. My scope of responsibility involves managing workflow interruptions from end to end, including incident management, communications, as well as remediation. So things like plane crashes, mainframe crashes, whatever the interruption may be. Our job is to restore service for our customers, so hopefully that you don't notice the interruption. Scope of responsibility is 78 processes across 250 unique locations, and overall it's about 12,000, roughly 12,000 team members today. Very proud of my team's unwavering focus on our customers today and our service delivery and our overall results, so I could go on for hours about that. I see the clock's not ticking, so that's just from a professional perspective. From a community perspective, I do have probably less formal government experience than maybe some of the other folks who may have come out for this particular position. I do definitely have hard skills earned in the private sector, focused on efficiency and relationship management that I definitely think I could put to work here at St. Croix County. Locally, I've engaged in efforts from coaching youth soccer through standing up 3 years ago robotics, the Western Wisconsin Robotics Tournament with our robotics coach when a local school had to back out. They weren't able to deliver due to construction going on within their facility, and their coach had stepped back and taken another position. So I stepped in and stood that up to make sure that all of our Western Wisconsin kids interested in STEM had the opportunity to participate and be able to make it to state. I've also done some work within my community to develop. We had the high-speed internet committee way back when. It feels like it was a decade ago, just to bring some attention to some of the lack of services and operations that we have for, opportunities we have for high-speed internet. We were successful in actually bringing in Joe with RiverNet for a period of time to deliver some more services for our area that is underserved in that arena. Overall, again, just a couple things that I would note. Recognizing this is really a significant time of change for St. Croix County, not related to Mr. Marshall. This isn't about Mr. Marshall. This is about my neighbor's investment overall in St. Croix County, my investment in St. Croix County, continuing to protect that and move us forward. I definitely have an overall interest in serving that interest for my community. It's not about Mr. Marshall, and again, my husband stopped by to talk to him. That resulted in a lawsuit, so I'll just address that and leave it as is. The world does not revolve around him. The world revolves around the community, what we invest in it, the generations that we're raising as we progress. That's really what it's all about. I think those are my key points. I didn't have a time limit for today, so I'm trying to keep it short and to the point, but that's why I'm interested in running for the county board.
Okay, this time it's open for questions. Anybody have any questions? Supervisor Coulter.
Yeah, maybe, and I'm going to ask the other candidate the same question, but what was the most important question that our chairman asked you in your interview with him, and how did you answer?
What was the most important question? Well, I think it goes back to why I'm interested in the role. That stood out. Definitely we talked about a lot of the individual issues as I'm working to educate myself and get up to speed, but overall the why am I interested in being here, and again that's really to protect my neighbor's investment and our investment that we've made in St. Croix County and continue to evolve and grow. We have a lot of change coming at us, so I think that was a really key part.
Any other questions? Supervisor.
Yeah. As a member of the Community Development Committee, of which District 2, the former supervisor was on that committee. In fact, she chaired it. I'd like to get some input from you in terms of your feelings, support about the projects related to the new bridge coming across, land that's being considered for preservation, if you will, Parks and Rec, bike and pedestrian, beyond planning. If you could give me a little bit of feedback
In
there.
general. So I think watching historically, one of the biggest topics of discussion recently has been some of the bike paths and the community development in the area. I am really interested in resources within the area, but I am also concerned about how we're going to pay for those resources long-term. I'm not necessarily willing to tax the elderly couple across the road who may be on a fixed income to pay for things like that, but I also realize we have to be very efficient and effective with our dollars to make sure that we can build resources for our, again, future generations. I've got 2 kids in the high school, definitely plan to continue to stay in the community and would be interested in participating. But again, I'm interested, but I am concerned about how we're going to pay for those things today. Did I answer your question, or was there more there?
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
And now we'll move forward with Jerry Colster. Come forward.
Thank you, Chairman Larson and the rest of the board. I'd like to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Jerry Kester. I'm a resident of Somerset Town. I've been a resident there for over 30 years. I've served as the Town of Somerset Clerk Treasurer for the past 20 years. I've been a member of the Parks, Rec, and Plan Commission since January of 2014, at which time we began at the Town of Somerset working on updating our comprehensive land use plan. That was a pretty extensive process. There was several public open meetings. We worked with West Central Regional Planning Commission in Eau Claire, and we adopted our updated comprehensive land use plan in March of 2015. I have also been on the Transportation and Facilities Committee as the secretary. I am a liaison between the public and the Town of Somerset and St. Croix County. The Town of Somerset has adopted county zoning, and so therefore we are working with the county ordinances and staff. As a planning commission member, I have been involved in rezoning of property, conditional use permit applications, land divisions, a lot of concept maps, and land planning in general. I feel I would be a good fit for the vacancy on the Community Development Department Committee, as I have knowledge and experience in that area. On a personal note, I am married. I have 4 adult grown children, 2 whom are married and 2 who are in college. I have time to serve the community and the residents of District 2. I feel that I have a firm foundation in working with the town. I've learned a lot through the last 20 years. I've done budgeting, payroll, tax roll, accounts payable, receivable, elections, licensing and permits, property tax appeal, public notices, just to name a few. And I feel like I have built on a firm foundation which I could efficiently and effectively serve the county.
Okay. Questions at this time? Anybody have any questions? Supervisor Colter.
Yeah, same question I asked Jessica.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, Roger asked me why I would be interested in the position, and as I said, for the past 20 years, I've been serving the residents of the Town of Somerset, and I just really enjoy working with people, serving on committees, and I'm involved in local government, and I'm interested in it, and it would just add more to my life to be able to serve on this capacity. I've never served on a board except for the Planning Commission. I've always, just been to a lot of meetings as clerk treasurer and been helping people who want to divide their land or helping them with their questions, answering questions, and working with people. I enjoy that.
Supervisor Berkey.
I would ask the same question with respect to bike and pedestrian, not only planning, but the investment and installation of projects that particularly seem to be impacting that district with the new bridge going in, park by the elementary school, et cetera.
I'm familiar with the mitigation funds. We did receive a grant for some of the mitigation funds for Apple River Erosion Control Project. And also, I'm familiar with the St. Croix Bike and Pedestrian Trails Coalition. And there is discussion on the Landing Hill section of the bike trail and funding for that. And I am aware that we need an engineering plan to decide which side of Highway 64 would be the best side for the bike path connection from the Holton area to the Somerset, possibly in the Richmond area. And the group is working very hard on obtaining funds to hire an engineering firm for a preliminary study. They're actually coming to our town board meeting tomorrow night with a presentation on getting an engineer to do a preliminary study to find out which side of the highway would be the best side for that connection. And then after the study, I understand that they would be interested in applying for a TAP, a federal grant, for those monies. Yeah.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll have Cindy pass out the board
Chairman
papers.
Larson, if I could address the board
Sure.
on this
Supervisor
issue.
Schoberg.
I do appreciate the applicants' comments and their willingness to serve, but I'm a little bit disappointed with the process that we undertook. I don't know what questions you were asked, what the criteria were, and there was at least 5 candidates that had submitted their applications. And for some reason, 3 of those candidates, I don't know what criteria was used to rule them out, but they were ruled out. And even one of those candidates was recommended by one of the town chairs. And from my reading of the bylaws, when there's a vacancy, we're supposed to receive input from the chairs. Well, we did, and for some reason, at least that candidate was not forwarded to us. And if we're going to have an election, I'd like to have an election of all the candidates. I'd like to hear from all of them. I mean, these 2 candidates are fine, but if this is an open election and this is a democratic process, why don't we hear from all 5 of them? And I'm also curious as to why the chief deputy of the sheriff's department, rather than another county supervisor, or maybe somebody else that we would all agree to, would be doing the interviewing together with the chair. So I'm disappointed with the process. I'd like to make a motion that we not act on this matter tonight, but instead that we reopen the position so that we can entertain the applications from the other 3 candidates too that submitted their applications timely.
Supervisor Peterson.
So it's
Seconded.
a motion to postpone this for an indefinite time and to open it up for the other candidates' applications to be received and considered.
You second that? Supervisor Osmus.
My understanding is if we postpone it for an indefinite amount of time, did you say indefinite? Or are you going to postpone it
No,
to a...
if I said indefinite, I misspoke. I'm sorry. It would be until the next meeting, the November board meeting.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Brinkman.
Question, because I don't know the answer to it. Doesn't the bylaws also state that the chair could appoint a person and totally not even involve the board?
No, I think,
That is correct. There's no requirement under the board rules that the chair forward more than one name. In fact, our rules are a little bit of an anomaly. Because we're self-organized, we've chosen to allow the board chair to, under its rules, to forward more than one name. But it's not required to forward all names.
Board has to confirm.
The board has to confirm regardless of whether one or more names are forwarded. There's no requirement that that if 5 people apply, you vote on 5 people.
Supervisor Hanson.
I think the question here isn't that the process was gone around. I think everybody would agree that the chair has the right to bring forward 1 or 2 or 3 and eliminate 1 or 2 candidates as he sees fit. I think the question here is that we had at least one candidate who was recommended by a town board chair that was eliminated. And that's of concern for me. And I would like, out of fairness then, if that candidate was not brought forward, I think we should bring forward all of the candidates. And for that reason, I agree with Supervisor Schoberg, and I would like to vote for this and go with that. So that's that.
Supervisor Brinkman.
I guess what my question was alluding to is maybe Supervisor Schoberg, this is something that should be looked at going forward as a change in our bylaws. And in fact, I sent you an email regarding that, so that's what my question comes from.
Okay. Any other discussion? Supervisor Rosnes?
With the motion that's moving forward for Mr. Schoberg, are you asking the chairman to go back and re-look at your recommendation at all 5 candidates again, and then bring them back again? Because that would, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, we've got to show a direction to the chair in which way we need to move forward on this.
The way I put the intent of my resolution is to have all 5 of the candidates brought forward. So if you're going to not have the applicants screened by the chair in this case, especially when we had it.
Supervisor Schoberg,
I'm sorry.
Corp Counsel just said that's out of order to be talking about that, so.
I think that if you're going to require this, that they bring all, you're basically eliminating the authority of the board chair as written in the rules. In order for it to accomplish what you want, I think you would have to suspend the rules to basically force the chair to bring 5 people forward. So I agree with the chair that it's out of order.
Any other discussion?
I move to suspend the rules.
Second by Supervisor Hanson. Discussion on suspending the rules. So, it's very hard.
I realize that this is a very tenuous time for everyone on the board, and that certainly there were candidates that board members were made aware of who are certainly viable for this position. However, we do have bylaws which we operate under. And if we are to suspend the rules every time that we are disappointed in what has been presented, then we need to take a much stronger look at our bylaws and how we operate under them. Currently, the bylaws allow the chair to bring forth those candidates that he or she feels should be representative, and for this body to vote a new member. While I agree that this is a tenuous situation, I am one who also believes in standing by the rules that we have put in place to run this body by. Therefore, I would encourage you all that for future, perhaps we need to review the bylaws and how appointments are done in such manner. For today, I will not support it.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll vote on the suspension.
Yes.
What?
Yep, of those here.
Suspend the rules, right? So that passed. You suspend the rules. So then go ahead and Supervisor Scholberg.
So it's back to my motion, and I appreciate your concern about the rules. But all rules can have exceptions, and I think we just allowed one. So in this case, we have 5 candidates. It's a finite amount. They all had submitted their applications timely, and just the process of hearing from all 5 of them seems to be something that this board wants to see happen. So maybe it's going to be one of the 2 that have already presented, and maybe it's not. So I urge your support of the motion.
Supervisor Brinkman.
So will we have to repost it and all those things of that nature and start over from the beginning?
I don't think that's the intent of Supervisor Schoberg's motion.
I'll answer it. It's the 5 that have already been submitted on time. It's Scott Nordstrand, it's Jessica Lee, it's Jerry Kester, it's Chris Matter, and Kelly Ott.
I have a second to that. That's an emotion, correct?
Yeah.
What? Yep, okay. Is there any other discussion? If not, we'll vote on it. And that passes, so they'll bring all 5 of them back at the November meeting. Thank you. We'll move forward to County Administrator Thompson, appointment of Council of Aging and Disabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This should be a little easier. I'm recommending the appointment of Esther Wentz to the Council on Aging and Disabilities Board to fill the vacancy created by Jerry Adams leaving the council. I ask for your support.
Supervisor Osnes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move forward with the approval from Supervisor Thompson of Esther Wentz to the Council on Aging and Disabilities.
Do I have a second? Supervisor Nelson, second that. Any discussion? Not seeing any. We'll vote on this. Thank you. And that's all yeses. Thank you. Then we have appointments to the St. Croix Economic Development Board, West Central Region Planning Commission.
Yes, I'd like to recommend the appointment of Supervisor Nelson to the St. Croix County Economic Development Corporation and Supervisor Judy Ochterhoff to the West Central Regional Planning Commission. These are to replace the seat vacated by Supervisor Ring.
Do I have a motion to that? Supervisor Berkey?
Do you prefer that the motion be separate for each position? Or do you want them moved in one motion?
If it's acceptable to the board, I would take it in one motion.
So move.
Okay, I have a second. Supervisor Hanson. Any discussion? Not seeing any discussion, we'll vote. And that was all yeses. Thank you. We'll move on to our annual reports for the evening. St. Croix County Association, Gail Meyer.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board and guests. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Gail Meyer, and I'm currently president of the St. Croix County Fair Association. I'm pleased to be here this evening to share a little bit about the St. Croix County Fair. First of all, though, at your station, you will find I left you a little packet of reading material like that, and if you don't have one, I do have extra copies. There's a flyer for a fundraising event for the fairgrounds that we'll be having on October 14th in Richmond. Some information about our indoor winter storage opportunities, and a save the date card for next year's fair and some other upcoming events at the fairgrounds. Hopefully you all received your copy of the annual report, which is on the visual up there right now. I submitted that, and it included a visual of some pictures with some little recap and the association highlights for the year, in addition to our goals and budget requests for continued improvements for the fair. Now, I'm sure you've all read it cover to cover, and you have your highlights, all memorized. But if you have any questions after my brief talk, I'll be happy to answer them. Tonight, though, I'd like to offer you some insights into the importance of the fair industry in Wisconsin. The material that I've gathered is mostly credited to our Allison Dairyland and the Wisconsin Association of Fairs. So looking at the big picture, county fairs are vital for our rural communities for several reasons. First of all, the fair is more than just ribbons. Yes, everybody wants to get a blue ribbon, but competition for that blue ribbon promotes working towards being your best and doing your best work, which in turn teaches us life lessons about the value of working hard to achieve our goals throughout life. In 2016, Wisconsin Fairs rewarded that hard work of over $800,000 in premiums to youth and adults exhibitors that were based on their placements in their participating categories. The rewards for St. Croix County exhibitors this year amounted to almost $12,000. So that hard work does pay off. Another point that fairs are important is that it brings communities together each and every year. The St. Croix County Fair is a place where people can share their talents, meet friends and socialize, to entertain and be entertained. And the fair offers visitors the opportunity to see, hear, touch, smell, and taste the richness and variety of what our county has to offer. For some, the fair is the only place old friends get to meet again and catch up and enjoy this summer tradition. Wisconsin, incidentally, has 75 county fairs, 3 district fairs, and of course the state fair, which altogether attract over 3 million visitors in 2016. Another point why fairs are vital to our community is it gets people to explore new projects and interests. Now, the objective of all fairs is to present a teaching and learning experience that is enjoyable for all ages. Competition for those best agricultural and domestic products for our county is an annual celebration for everyone that allows people to come together to share and to learn. From ceramics to cattle, the fair offers an activity or project for everyone and the opportunity to try new things. The top 3 junior fair categories for premiums in our county this year were dairy cattle at $1,397, photography, $815.50, and cultural arts, $769. So you can see that the fairs are not just cows and crops. Another point to consider is that the fair industry brings economic activity to local small businesses. When county fair visitors come to the fair, they also enjoy many offerings from the local community, from groceries to camping at the local park, local food vendors and nonprofit groups, and service providers within that area. Significant income is generated for many businesses. And finally, the main point is that the fair brings memories that you can hold for the rest of your life. Actually, every person has a fair story. Be it is that the place where you met your spouse? Or is that the time that the pig got away and ran into the woods? Or the thrill of getting that champion ribbon, or playing mud volleyball, or the things that go with sleeping in the barn during the fair? Memories are created, stories are told, and the tradition of the fair carries on generation after generation. I strongly encourage you to attend the St. Croix County Fair, if you haven't already, and to also consider what you might like to bring to the fair. I've left some premium books on the back table so that you can get started with your exhibits and what you're going to bring to the fair in 2018. A very special thank you to Supervisors Jill Berkey, Judy Achterhoff, and Shayla Liebfried for their assistance, and to you, the entire county board, for your continued support of the St. Croix County Fair. Does anyone have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
Supervisor Achterhoff.
Jess, can you tell them what happened with one of our talent show winners?
Oh, I'm so sorry, yes. That is in the report. We have a local talent show every year at the fair, and it has 2 categories. It has under 12 and then over 12. In the report, on page, I don't know what the page number is, but anyway, I will read here that the first place winner at our county fair this year was, in the over category, was a gal by the name of Kennedy Kelberg from Somerset. And then we had a young man named Ray Job Amundsen in the 12 and under division. Now these 2 winners get to compete at the Wisconsin State Fair for their amateur talent competition. Well, it just so happens that Ray Job, who is a 5th grader and a member of the Dry Run Go-Getters 4-H Club in New Richmond, went on to win first place at the Wisconsin Junior Amateur Talent Competition with his rendition of Ring and Fire by June Carter. He took home $4,000 in prize money and a year's supply of Jack's Frozen Pizza, which was one of the sponsors. So we're very, very proud of that, and we hope that will also generate more participation in our talent show. And anybody can join that. So, any other questions? Yes.
Supervisor Berkey.
I just wanted to take the time to comment on the terrific amount of energy and hard work that the board, led by Gail Meyer, does for the fairgrounds, for children, for the community around the area. People come from surrounding counties as well. I also want to put in a plug for the Friends of the Fairgrounds, of which there's an event, and I've mentioned this perhaps at the last meeting, but you have a copy of the flyer. This will be hopefully a first annual at Gibby's in New Richmond. It's not just for German folks. It should be a lot of fun. So again, I can't think enough, the number of people, and Judy and Shayla, we see this when we go to the meetings over at the fairgrounds or in Baldwin at the Ag Center, the amount of enthusiasm and energy, it's just unbelievable. I love it.
Thank you, Jill.
Any other questions?
Any other comments, questions? If not, please allow me at this time to introduce Caitlin Conder, who is our 2017-18 Fairest of the Fair.
Hello everyone, my name is Caitlin Conder and I'm serving as the 2017 St. Croix County Fairest of the Fair. I am 20 years old and I grew up on a small family dairy farm just outside of Glenwood City where we milk Holsteins. I am currently a junior at the University of Wisconsin River Falls where I'm majoring an alumni, I'm assuming. I'm majoring in agricultural business and hopes to become an ag loan officer to help all of our local farmers grow and succeed. As Fairest of the Fair, I'm a public relations representative for our fair, so I essentially promote our fair everywhere I go, whether that be local town celebrations, being a part of their parades and such, or whether it's fundraising for our fair, or whatever else we have on the agenda throughout the year. I'm no stranger to the St. Croix County Fair. I was a member of the Bell Ringers 4-H Club for 12 years, where I was very involved in showing dairy cows at the county fair, and was also a member of our county's dairy judging team. So Gail mentioned a bunch of different things that are great about county fairs throughout our state of Wisconsin, but my favorite thing about the St. Croix County Fair is the sense of goal setting that implements into younger kids, into kids at a younger age. I still remember the first calf that I brought to the fair. Her name was Honda, and I was a clover bud. I was in first grade, and I was so excited for that moment because I had two older sisters that showed dairy cows, and I begged my parents, oh, when can I join 4-H so I can show dairy? But I still remember that moment that I held that first medal in my hand. And it was the happiest moment of my life, you know, because I finally got to show a dairy cow at the county fair, and I started making those connections throughout the county with people who had the same interests as me. And that sense of goal setting, whether I got a red ribbon and I wanted to get a blue ribbon the next year, or maybe a best udder, or maybe a reserve champion, or whatever it is, it's very important to have that sense of goal setting at such a young age to help with future generations coming into St. Croix County, whether it be going to college, finding your dream job, growing a family here in St. Croix County, or whatever it is. So without further ado, thank you for all of your continuous support of our fair, and just remember, there's no place like the fair. That's our theme for the next year, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Move on to our Community Development Annual Report. Ellen Denzer, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having us. So I will, gonna switch it over. Okay. Move it right down to the next annual report here. Yep. Okay. So just to give you a little very short recap of some of the highlights in our annual report, Community Development Department is made up of several divisions in several locations throughout St. Croix County. We are the Hudson area, Baldwin, and all in our parks. We have our Parks Division, we have our Resource Management Division, which consists of our land and water conservation, recycling, and environmental education. We also have here in Hudson, our Land Use Division, which handles all of our code administration and enforcement. And we also have our Planning and Land Information, GIS, which also includes our real property description, our mapping, and all of our planning functions. So pretty diverse group of people. We work with departments from throughout St. Croix County. We work with public health. We work with emergency services. We provide the maps and information for our dispatch center. We work with them in making sure all of the databases that we maintain, all our maps, are up to date. We work with the Sheriff's Department. We've written programs to assist them in tracking accidents and things like that. So we work with a lot of different departments in addition to, of course, all of our administration departments. So moving forward, our 2016 goals are obviously, I'm going to keep this very short and just hit a few of the key highlights because our report is 15 pages long. Lots of pictures, lots of bullet points, lots of information. But I'll keep it brief and talk about a few of the key accomplishments over the 2016 year. One of our #1 things we did is expanded and improved our credit card transactions in our department. There aren't that many departments, our treasurer and a few of the others that are actually doing credit card transactions, but we took it the next step. We have online payment available for a variety of permitting and other activities, but most especially for our Parks Division. And one of the main things we added was online reservation system, and that actually has proved to be very successful. 2016 was the highest level of camping in the history of our county park system. So we're very, very proud of that. We think that's a huge accomplishment, and we attribute a great deal of it not only to our superb staff, but also to having online reservation system for the first time and taking credit cards, which is the wave of the future now that we're here. Another really important thing, and that is also on here, that we increased park attendance overall and sales by 7% and 9%. So we think that again is attributable to making it more convenient, easy for the public to come out and use our park system, pay for attendance, that kind of thing. Some other major things we've done is continue to implement the bluff line and growth management mitigation activities related to the new St. Croix River crossing. We've been very busy with planning our new Trailhead Park, which will be constructed next year in conjunction with Wisconsin DOT. And we've been very busy, that's been over the course of 2016 and 2017. We've been very busy looking for the right property to acquire, which you'll have later on in the agenda today. It's been a 2-year process in going after that acquisition project. Obviously, we worked all last year on getting the bicycle and pedestrian plan written and getting it ready to go, which this county board adopted in May of this year. So a lot of those big projects have been going and ongoing and have gone really well. We are starting our next biggest project, and we basically spent a good part of 2016 getting ready to interview and select consulting firms to help us with updating our ordinances, our comprehensive revision to our zoning ordinance, and a rewrite of all our stormwater and erosion control standards, and looking at those in terms of standalone ordinances or in conjunction with our existing ordinances. So that's a huge project, and we'll hear a little more about that later tonight. So those are just a few good examples. We also continue to actively pursue grants. We're very aggressive. Last year, our staff in our Resource Management Division, credit to Kyle Kulo and Liz Usborne, in achieving a $300,000 Targeted Resource Management Grant, sometimes referred to as a TRIM grant, for the Rush River watershed. For many years, we've been working on the Dry Run Creek watershed, trying to really focus efforts and not just our efforts, but also our funding towards that watershed, and we've been very successful. And now we're shifting to a new watershed, and that group is actually forming a farmer-led group there also, which is another great accomplishment. So with that, I'll start to move through a few other things we've done, on these pages. So a couple of key items on this page. I would pull your attention to online viewing of property transactions. So whenever a transaction happens in the Register of Deeds office, it takes time for that process to get put and made available to the public online in our database systems. And we have reduced, in the past 2 years, we've been working very hard, and we've reduced the lag time from over 3 months down to 1 month, which is pretty great. We think that's an amazing accomplishment. On the next page, as you know, over the past few years, we've acquired a variety of additional data. We bought LiDAR data and had the overflown over the county. And we've also, this past year, started doing pictometry, which is right term, but angled, more of an angled aerial photography. And we've expanded our map gallery, what's available to the public to look at and utilize these products. We've added over 10 new products for the citizens of our county to utilize. So feel free to go online. You'll see that on the main page of our website off to the right. There's a link to our MAP products. Some other key things we've done in our land use administration is we've seen an uptick, a definite uptick in our sanitary permits, which is always an indication of activity, residential growth. We've seen, you can kind of see it, it's way down at the bottom here, but it's definitely moving back up, moving out of that slow period. We're nowhere near our highs of almost 700 sanitary permits in a single year back in before the recession, but we're definitely seeing an increase, and we're seeing an increase in other activities. We also are very proud of our ongoing sanitary maintenance program and getting those postcards out. If any of you live in the rural areas, you've gotten a postcard from us, and you know we keep those going, and we're very proud of the way that we're helping to protect the groundwater in St. Croix County through that particular program. Other things we're highlighting here is our stormwater planning and our erosion control and inspection, and how we keep that active and positive, and making sure that we do it in a aggressive but positive way with citizens. Again, protecting our surface and groundwater. Resource management, some key things. Miles of grass waterway, or not miles, but feet of grass waterway installed, stream bank restorations, all great programs, and we have it highlighted below, showing you pictures of the before and after, and changing those stream banks and making them look better. Some additional items are nutrient management planning. The acres that are under it, you'll notice that that acreage exceeds our farmland preservation acreage. It's related to our larger operators in the county, our large producers, but also significantly related to continuing to work with farmers and encouraging to do nutrient management planning. Another important point, the St. Croix County is part of the TMDL, total phosphorus reduction goals for the whole St. Croix watershed. And we were the lead agency with accomplishing in 2016 the highest amount of phosphorus reduction, that 3,000 pounds. Soil loss, we continue to monitor that, soil loss per acre. And as you can see, we're seeing a reduction in that, which we're also proud of, continuing with our education. Other items that I would highlight, or what I would mention too, that our activities in resource management, all of these different things, total value in 2016 was $196,000 worth of work. That's done in conjunction with property owners spending some of that money, and the county coming up with grants, working through the state programs for that, and federal programs also. Resource management education, again, we've done some great things. A lot of different classes, a lot of different outreach. We have a lot of activity. This is all done by Alicia Miller, one of our key employees, who's just very, very amazing, and does a lot of wonderful classes, and works with students and works with different schools throughout the county. So she does a great job. Recycling, our key event this year was we were able to write a new household hazardous waste contract. We reduced that by about 40%, which allowed us to increase our household hazardous waste collections from 1 collection per year to 2. So for the first time this year, we did that in 2016. Now in 2017, this coming weekend, we will be having a fall household hazardous waste collection. And this is as a result, reducing that and going down to 1 was because we had significant reductions in the state grants that we've received. So it's a pretty big deal for us to be able to expand that. And also point out that 59,000 pounds collected is the largest we've ever collected. So pretty big deal. Parks. A lot of great things have been happening in parks. I'll call attention to a few things. We've tried a few new items. We've seen attendance and interest in activities at the parks continue to increase. Last year we did a movie night on the Halloween, kind of before Halloween, and had over 100 people attend at both parks. Thought that was a very good turnout for our first event, and we hope to continue that. We've tried to make it more easy and more fun for people to rent all our different watercraft, and that we've added a watercraft rental cabin down at the Delta at Homestead, and we've definitely seen an uptick in participation, and people really love it. We have our watercraft rentals are way up. Other things we've done is added some new signage. These are limestone blocks, and these are done by a local business, Rivard Stone. Very attractive. They've added to our entrances at Troy Beach and Glen Hills, so we're kind of proud of those. And we had a great project in 2016 we did with a local Eagle Scout member from the Woodville area, Joe Spitzmuller, who did a fishing line, recycling bins, and he installed them at every park and boat landing. And he started out calling me up one night. I was here working late, and I answered the phone. A young man said, hi, is there somebody I can talk to about an Eagle Scout project? And I said, you got the right person. And what he started out as wanting to do one. By the time we were all done, we had it not only in all the county parks and at all the boat landings, but also at Willow River State Park. And so it was a really great project. Very proud of that young man. So pretty neat guy. A few other things, just want to point out again, camping. This shows the chart going back all the way to when Glen Hills County Park, our campground, first opened, and shows you all the different years and how we're coming back up in attendance, and we've had the highest camping attendance ever. And we, like I said, we attributed a great deal to online reservation system. So it's pretty positive. A lot of other great programs. Some other activities going on. You'll see our new sign that we'll be having installed at our new Trailhead Park at the new St. Croix River Crossing Loop Trail, which will be constructed next year. We're very excited about that. We've been a very busy group of people, not just working on our own departments and in conjunction with other departments, but also assisting throughout the county with a lot of activities. It isn't just the work that we do that we're assigned to do, then it's in our job descriptions. Our staff are out there, they're eager, they want to contribute. I have people who are on the staff advisory committee, the branding committee, the wellness committee, the technology committee. We added it up and we have 17 employee committee assignments. Some people are doing 2 and 3 different things. So they're pretty involved and we're very proud of them. And they spend a lot of time, especially on the ERP and the website redesign. So very proud of their contributions. A couple of changes coming up. 2017, this year, our tree sales went all online. And that was super successful. We'll give you the numbers. It's in the next couple pages, but we had the highest year ever for tree sales, even though we went to all online and all credit card payment. So that was outstanding. Had a really great annual Conservation AIDS project, which we have a picture here and a little story for you. I'll keep this short. Some internal things. We did an office remodel, which really improved security and functionality for our department, and also improved conferencing. And we went to a high-density filing system, which was a very positive thing. Our staff have a lot of passion about being employees here, and they went all out. We tied, it doesn't say that, probably should have, but we tied to win the Christmas decorating contest. And they were very proud of that also. So with that, I'll just assume that if there's any questions, I'll keep it short. And I'd also like to pass out, we got these from the Minnesota Department of Transportation. There's one on my lapel. The pins, there's 2 different sizes, a large and a small, and I know some members have already received them from the Economic Development Corporation, but these are for you guys to take what you wish, and they are pins for the St. Croix River crossing. So start passing pile around and encourage you to take whichever size works best for you. I can't take credit for those. They did come from Minnesota DOT. So, any questions on that, on my report? Yes, Andy.
So LiDAR, it's done, it's up, it's going, the reports are being used. I mean, it was like 5 years ago we voted on that. Is it, when did it get done? I mean, has it been up and operational for a while?
Yes, but it's also, we provide it free, if I remember correctly, to anyone who wants it, but it takes a certain type of program to really utilize it. So not only do we provide it to like our county surveyors, development companies, that kind of thing for free, but for the average citizen who might want some use out of it or want to know how can it benefit them, we create map products. For instance, there's Hillshade. That's the one that I remember because it's just so incredibly dramatic and so incredibly interesting. but we've done a lot of different things with it. We've used it to map culverts in the county, for instance. We're working with another project we're doing, I don't think we're using LiDAR, but we're helping the highway department map all the signs on their roadways.
Can a supervisor stop in and get a demonstration of it?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yes. Other questions?
Supervisor Croix.
Yeah, I'm just curious, did you have the Glen Hills restrooms rebid in January of 2017? Because I know,
Yes, we did, and the new bid price was significantly lower than it was in 16, and we went forward with it, and if you haven't been out there, you need to go. The project is about 3 cars, literally and figuratively. It's not open. It's not open quite yet, but we will be doing.
Hold it.
Oh, okay, Scott. The building is up. The building is beautiful. They are doing the finishing touches. It will be done. We need to do the landscaping, which is scheduled for next weekend. If the weather doesn't cooperate, that will have to be put off till next spring. But otherwise, it is done, and it came in well under budget.
Supervisor Nelson.
Yeah, I got a more serious question. I've noticed, I don't have to go to Glen Hills to do it, but I've noticed more since I've been biking around the county and stuff that people are starting to dispose more of their furniture and such into our right-of-ways. I have not noticed, and we have transportation committee meeting on Monday, I'm gonna bring that up too, that I would like to see something on the websites to have people know what contact numbers they need to get a hold of so we can get that stuff out of these ditches. Because I could have had a whole TV set, a couch, and a radio, and a 40-mile bike ride. And I think that's something that us as residents, we should be able to know to contact and get that out of the way, because it makes us look, it looks pretty dirty. That's one thing, but, you know, we got pride in this county. It's something we should take care of.
Well, and we do have that information on our website, but we also know in talking to the towns every year that that is an ongoing and continuing problem. And one thing we did do, try to help out with that, was this year we went back to, you probably wouldn't be aware of this, but about 6 years ago and before that, we held an annual electronics collection. It was not free to residents. It was always we coordinated it, we publicized it, and a vendor did all the work. And then when the state moved to requiring electronics collection and requiring electronics crediting and back and forth by large businesses such as Best Buy and that kind of thing, in response to that, we felt it was best that we get out of it to help those get established. And we've been asked by the towns, because it was such a problem with the dumping in the ditches, that we bring that back. So we brought it back this year, and it was actually held at the Service Center in New Richmond. We didn't have as big a turnout as we hoped, but we do plan on holding it again next year, and so we will continue to do that. That does help with the electronics when it comes to the furniture problem. That's just a lot harder to deal with. You can get rid of things through your local haulers, and we do have that information all on our website, but it does cost money, and there are people who will just not pay the fees that they need to pay. So.
Any other questions? Sure. Supervisor Hanson.
I think you mentioned it very briefly, but I'd just like to highlight the fact that we made the total maximum daily load goal for phosphorus. It speaks a whole big volume about the quality of work that your department does, because that's a huge deal, a huge step toward water quality. And I'm wondering if you could just make a quick statement toward the type of work that goes into doing that and the value that gives us for water protection.
Okay, well, it's actually pretty huge. The EPA set the TMDL standard that we have to meet in this area, and it's been endorsed by the state of Wisconsin and the state of Minnesota, because the St. Croix River Basin is a bi-state basin. And then there is actually a report that comes out, and the very first report came out for 2016. And in that report, all of the counties on both sides of the river had to report what they consider the amount that, all the different activities, and if we go back up to the resource management pages and look at, for instance, these lists of activities here, gotta go way up, sorry about that, but things like stream bank restoration and cover crop establishment and grassed waterways and stream bank stabilizations, et cetera. And even if you go further up and look at all the work that's done in land use in terms of stormwater erosion and inspection and making sure that these kind of practices are done. We have to put a value on every one of those practices. We calculate it, and that's a new requirement. And then when we calculate those values for how much actual volume and what's reduced and what's done, then we submit those reports. A few years ago, one of the things you guys authorized was the purchase of another software program, Transcendent, and in that program, we are beginning to document and help us do our management of all those numbers that we have to report, which are then conglomerated and added together, and to come up with those phosphorus reductions and determine whether or not we reach those percentages. And so all that type of work is ongoing and continuous and added up, and in addition, there's other programs, one STEPL, and I'm not, please don't ask me off the top of my head what the acronym for STEPL is, but it's another program that we utilize to calculate how much phosphorus reduction and other soil erosion reductions we do. We look at all the education events and all the activity we do for education, and all of those get added into that annual report also. It's about 30, 40 pages, and it's very extensive. So we're a part of that, and we're trying to do our part. So is that, okay, yep.
Any other questions?
Yep. And if anybody didn't get a few more yet here, so let me know, or come see me afterwards. And then I'll just say one other thing. We always do a lot of promotion and other activities. One of the very first things on the top of the 2016 goal said that we hired another administrative associate. It wasn't an additional person, it was someone replacing someone who had retired, but it said with a marketing emphasis. And that was an effort that I put forth to Pat, and that Pat supported. And in our department, where we do so many different things, we wanted to make sure that, especially with parks and our other activities, that we continue to market ourselves and let the public know what we've been doing. And Quinn Williams is the person who we hired. She's fantastic, doing an amazing job. She put together our annual report this year, with my assistance, of course, her oversight. And you can see she did it in a whole new format. And she's also working closely with all of our other team, including our mapping team. We've updated all of our brochures, all of our other things. And I'll just hand out one of our brochures, our Gateway to Western Wisconsin, that's been updated and, again, highlights all of our park system, and not just that, but a lot of other things in St. Croix County. There's some great pictures, there's great information in there. So please share them, pass them on, and make sure that we acknowledge how amazing all of the things in St. Croix County really are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. We will move on. Go to the Administrator Thompson with your financial report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to yield my time to the Water Study Group. I'm just kidding. The financial reports are in your packet. There's nothing significant to report on in terms of revenues and expenditures. I will say that your budget books are at your workstation tonight. Take this home with you. If you don't want it, everything will be online. If you don't want this, hard copy, bound copy, leave it at your workstation and we'll reassign it to staff. But take it with you. We have Committee of the Whole scheduled for October 11th at 5 p.m. and we'll take you through the budget during that meeting. You should have financial reports from the auditor also at your workstation. Take those with you as well. Thank you.
Any questions on the financial report? Not seeing none. We will move on to business at this time. Does everybody want to take a 5-minute break, or you want to move forward? Okay, we'll move forward.
think some people are not.
Wait a minute, what do we want to do? Move forward?
Show of hands.
5-minute break? 5-minute break, 5-minute break? Let's take a 5-minute quick break. Our first business item is zoning ordinance comprehensive revised update, a revision update. That,
Yeah, Jason, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jason Valerius. I'm a planning consultant with MSA Professional Services, and I am leading the team that's been retained by the county to help walk you through the comprehensive update to your zoning ordinance. So what I'd like to do tonight in the next few minutes is to give you an overview of what we've been doing and what we will be doing with this process so that you know what's going on, and give you an opportunity to ask any questions you might have of me, and if you have any, also to share any comments or thoughts that you'd like us to be aware of as we are working on this update of the zoning ordinance. I've got a few slides here. I believe you have in your packet a 2-page sheet which we've been using as our all-purpose information sheet to tell people about the project.
No,
so
it's just an update.
Why is this project happening? The ordinance hasn't been through a full comprehensive update in some time, and so there's the need to do some cleanup. So we're looking to ensure that it's consistent with state law and current legal standards. There's some interest in adjusting the districts and adjusting the standards to the varied needs of the towns across the county, as we've been learning in the process so far. As you all well know, there are differences between the east and the west, and in terms of how land is used and how people want to use the land, and so looking to accommodate the needs and the interests across the county. And more of a procedural thing, looking to make it a little bit easier for everyone to understand what the code is doing and to apply the ordinance. This project is being managed by the Community Development Department. Ellen is very much involved, but John Hilgers is the staff project manager, and Brett Boudreau has also been heavily involved. The team of consultants includes Mark White, who's a zoning specialist with White and Smith, and we also have another firm that one of their banners is Encode Plus, and I'll explain what that is. Basically, it's the website for the code. There's been a task force appointed with membership from county board, from CDC, and some members at large to help us learn and then to react to draft material as it comes out through the process. We have checked in once with the Community Development Committee, and we'll do that several more times through the process. So CDC will be one of our points of contact to make sure that we're headed in the right direction and give us feedback. And then, of course, ultimately the ordinance comes back to all of you for approval. And so we'll be looking to you to confirm and adopt at the end. One of the important things, one of the most important things with this process is that the towns are involved and on board with this change, with the changes that will come. And we don't know what those changes are yet. We're in an intake mode right now, asking questions, listening to people, trying to hear what people like and what they don't like right now. The end result of this, because it's a comprehensive revision, is that the towns each need to adopt proactively. They need to opt in again with the revised ordinance. So much of what we'll be doing, we'll be laying the groundwork to make that possible, so that we're doing this in collaboration with the towns. We have organized them into 4 groups so that we can meet with them through the course of the project in a somewhat efficient way. And we had that first round of meetings this past month in September, and we'll have more such meetings in February and August of next year. And by next August, we'll have a full draft of the ordinance in hand. And at that point, we expect that's when it's going to get serious for people. And despite our efforts to bring everyone along the way, we expect there's going to need to be some more sort of personal touch with the town. So we're expecting some individual town meetings where consultant team and or county staff will go out and have discussion with each town individually to address concerns, answer questions, etc. Each of the towns has been asked to provide a working group to participate in these cluster meetings. Most of those participants are plan commissioners and or town board members, with a few exceptions, and so we're pretty well plugged in, though our participation so far has had some gaps in it. There's a few towns that haven't shown up to the cluster meetings. So we've been making efforts to pester and to get them to attend, and most have been. So just a quick overview of the map. As you know, 4 of the 21 towns are not covered by town zoning right now. 3 have their own, and 1 is unzoned. And the rest are all part of this process. So this shows with the colors just how we've grouped them, roughly by some shared interests based on development pressure and things like that, but also for convenience. So we're having our meetings in sort of central locations within these clusters. We are also trying to reach out to residents at large. Zoning is not necessarily an easy topic to engage people on. It's sort of esoteric and hard to interface on, but there'll be a public meeting coming up on the 17th of October at the Baldwin Service Center, and we'll be kind of repeating this information and trying to engage people in discussion about opinions they have or concerns they have related to land use and its regulation. And then the only other public meeting of that nature that we have scheduled is next summer, when we have sort of a draft of all the materials on hand that we want to tell people about. To get people to those meetings, we're going to be doing a variety of things: public notices, looking to arrange for an article in the Hudson paper. We've got an email list. There'll be flyers that we'll be sending to the clerks, asking the working groups to promote and to talk about this process at their local town meetings, and of course putting on the county's web presences. Hoping to get more people engaged through that route, and of course wanting people to engage through their local town meetings as well. Quick view of the schedule. We started in August, and including a round of kickoff meetings with stakeholders that use the code a lot, with all of the community development staff, and with the task force. And as I said, we've done the town meetings, and we're approaching the end of this intake period, where we're going to be able to start summarizing all of that data. We're going to have some reflecting back of what we've learned at that public meeting on the 17th, and by November, I think we'll have condensed into a concise list the things that we've learned. And so we'll be developing a summary of those issues, and then a rough draft outline of what we think the new ordinance looks like. Meaning, if we're going to add a district, we'll at that point be ready to talk about what that new district is in rough terms. Explaining to people everything we learned, and then giving the outlines of the likely changes is what we'd be doing in early 2018. We'll get feedback on those proposed broad brushstrokes, and continue working on filling in all the details in March through the summer, and then be coming around through a round of meetings when we have a full draft on hand to tell people about and get feedback. Final project wrap-up then isn't anticipated until mid-2019. You'll see that there's this period of months in there next fall, about a year from now, when we'll be doing those individual town meetings. We just expect there's going to need to be some time in there to make sure that we've got the towns on board, and we're feeding that feedback into the process before we ask you to adopt. We're anticipating that we would ask you to adopt in the first couple of months of 2019, and then there's going to be some ensuing effort to have all the towns adopt following your action to adopt. One thing I didn't mention is that we're going to do a Kaizen event, and I think there's some familiarity here in the county about what this means. It's focusing on the process through which zoning is managed. You've had people trained, including county staff trained in running an event like this. So we're going to be taking most of the community development staff and sitting down with them for a couple of days to really dig into how the zoning procedures occur and to find the points that frustrate people, both on the staff side and on the user side, and to explore ways that we can make the process of administering the ordinance easier for everyone, easier to understand, and maybe quicker. I know we've already heard some concern about, it just takes a while to get a zoning change, and that's one of the things we'll be talking about. I mentioned Encode Plus. This is our web-based tool through which the zoning ordinance is actually going to be drafted. We're going to, as we draft language, it goes directly into this tool, and we will be passing back and forth draft language between the consultant team and staff so that we can view it, make comments, make edits, and track all that. And all of that password protected. But then as we get to wanting to put it out to the public, also this will be the tool through which people can see the ordinance, add their own comments or questions in there, and we'll be able to track those comments specific to certain parts in the code for people who are interested in diving in and doing that, and also kind of make note of our responses to things as appropriate, kind of at an internal project level. This tool, this Encode Plus tool, will also be the long-term hosting location for the code. It's going to be a lot easier to find things that you want, and for one of the challenges with the code is that there are often references to other pieces of the code. You have to go 5 other places to really understand what you've got to do, and that's going to happen a lot more easily because of the way that everything is linked, and those links are always protected and updated as necessary. Also, as the code is further amended in the future, and you do make amendments from time to time, that will be easily tracked. So if someone asks, well, wait, wasn't the code actually different when this was approved 8 years ago? You can easily go back and see what the code said 8 years ago in case it's changed since then. So I'm the project lead for the consultant team. John Hilgers is the project lead for the county and really has been the person that I've been pointing everyone to. He's the main contact for anyone and everyone as a starting point so that as things come up, they can flow through him. Again, I welcome questions about process, about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and also if you want to share comments about things you think we need to be paying attention to, I'd happily make note of that as well.
Any questions from anybody? No questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your
time.
That update. Thank you. And our number 2 is the Water Study Group presentation and recommendations. So we'll have Eric step forward.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for letting us come here. We're just going to do a real brief presentation on the Water Study Group and the conclusions we've reached, including the recommendations. There will be a full report that's forthcoming. It's in the very, very final stages of its editing. But today we just want to briefly go over the process and the core recommendations we came up with. As you may remember, the study group started back in December 6, 2016. There was a public hearing on a moratorium ordinance on the establishment or expansion of large livestock facilities. A motion was made, and it was amended to the original resolution on the moratorium to instead create a special study group to address nutrient pollution for large livestock facilities. On January 10th, 2017, the first meeting of the study group was held, meeting twice monthly until September 26, 2017. So there's quite a huge commitment on that group. In September 26, 2017, we presented the final recommendations, developed the core recommendations, and the final report. There was a motion made and it was conditionally accepted for the final report and recommendations. One of the key aspects that the group did is we developed an overarching goal, and this is what the recommendations were really going to be aimed for. So every recommendation that the group came up to had to be weighed against this goal, and were we moving towards that. And that overarching goal was to provide the St. Croix County Board with sound science-based recommendations for policies that protect the quality of groundwater supply that our county residents rely upon for personal household use and consumption. The study group meetings covered two different things. There was informational meetings where there was a lot of presentation of information on various subjects, learning going on, and then the other half of the meetings were more facilitated discussion. And that's where we sorted through the information, we debated back and forth, and arrived at what we were going to come up with for the final recommendations. Study group topics included groundwater hydrology, the capabilities and practices of the Community Development Department, groundwater modeling that had been done, agriculture and nutrient management, legal aspects of livestock siting and operations regulation, the roles of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, and the recent experience with groundwater quality protection in Kewaunee County. And finally, after all those topics, we moved on to the facilitated discussions. Out of those came these core recommendations, and we came up with 8 core recommendations. And for that, I'd like to turn it over to 2 of our study group members to present that, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well. Before we move on to that, though, I would like to thank everybody that was involved in the study group, the familiar faces I see here within the group and who were often in attendance, supervisors as well, for their commitment and hard work for what I think was a very productive and worthwhile process. And with that, we'll move on to the recommendations themselves.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the county board for not only creating the group, but giving us the extra 3 months that you guys allowed. Oh, I'm Tom Zawald. I was a citizen member on the group from Pleasant Valley Township. So we came up with core recommendations for the county board. Now, these were things that were the short-term goals. We excluded anything that was long-term when we did this, just because these are the things we can focus on the here and the now, kind of. Our first one was explore options regarding the regulation of livestock operations and licensing for facility siting for ongoing monitoring of livestock operations for the purpose of protecting water resources. This was one that fit very well with our last presentation. This deals with the county zoning, because if the county is not zoned, facilities don't have to be permitted. So a licensing could be an option the county would choose to take if townships choose to go unzoned. The second one was to increase the number of acres in nutrient management plans. We heard speakers talking that one of the big things, if we have an issue, is how many acres, they look at how many acres are under a nutrient management plan in the county. And we are not at the threshold of some of the other counties across the state that are in the 90%. I think we were in the 38 to 40%. And so that was one of the core things we want to do. How do you do it? That's a good question, you know. But it's something that, as we go forward, can be looked upon, and it's a show of success. So then we've got revised county land use policy and county zoning ordinances to protect groundwater resources by exploring options for adopting each level of 5 levels of authority for regulating well design and construction. That is something the county can take over from the DNR, which will do us a couple of things. It'll actually give us the exact data without requesting it from the DNR of where all the wells are constructed, when pumps are put in, and bigger thing is it gets the county the water data from any new construction or any new pump installation. And this is something that is required by law to be done by your well driller, and currently that data goes to the DNR, and unless that data is shared, the county does not see it. So this would be a reliable source to keep ongoing information going. The third one was separate incompatible land uses. Again, that goes back to our county zoning and making sure that across the county, trying to minimize the conflicts that can come about. And an easy way to do this potentially could be through our zoning ordinances. So again, a key point, just because that's on the docket right now, and if you don't address it now, you're gonna miss your boat. Another one was varying lot size requirements in environmentally sensitive areas. One thing we learned throughout the course of it was there are multiple sources for well contamination, and depending on the topography and the soils and the subsoils you have, you can be in an environmentally sensitive area that would require different levels of construction or separations from your septic to your well in order to make sure your water's safe. Because the last thing anyone wants to do is contaminate their own well, but currently we allow that regardless of where it is. So we can make, in certain areas, you have to have a larger lot size to accommodate. We wanted to establish groundwater recharge zones, so this goes back to the mapping the county can do, and encourage common private on-site wastewater treatment sites and shared wells, because if you and your neighbor are in close proximity, the thought behind it is if you're two people drilling one well, you can build it to higher standards to ensure, and your septic to ensure that you stay safer longer. And your neighbors, because you can contaminate your neighbor's water the same way. And the fourth point was to develop a county protocol for urgent responses to actual or potential water resource pollution events that threaten human health and or environmental and natural resources.
And my name is Leslie Sacchina, and I also served on this study group, and I'm a citizen member from the town of Silon and also a farmer. And I'll review the last four recommendations. The next one is develop a scientific sound drinking water well testing program to create a baseline data to measure drinking water quality over time, which includes consistent recording pertinent data, maintaining and improving the county database of all well construction records and water test information, and increased participation in the existing drinking water and well testing program. And this recommendation may not sound that new because a lot of this is happening, but one of the challenges that we recognized when we took a look at what the county was doing, the work that they were doing, is that there are a lot of to test your water, well water, it can be a little bit of a complicated process of, I haven't done it myself for our well because it was put in new maybe about 5 years ago, so I trusted the test that was done that way, but from my understanding, you have to light a match and do all sorts of things and then send it into the lab. And then in addition, the lab data that comes back from different labs also varies in terms of what that report looks like. And then you also add in the factor that if citizens are doing this themselves, our county doesn't always see that data. And so this is a way for our county to have some benchmarks in terms of looking at where is our water quality now, and then also look at that into the future. In this area too, we also recognize that it's voluntary participation with our citizens, but also recognize the importance of looking at where can we use in terms of municipal wells to do some of the testing to get an idea of where we're at with our water quality as a whole within our county. The next area is identify and map environmentally sensitive areas and conduits to groundwater to improve the siting of pouts, wells, and manure spreading. Map closed depressions, sinkholes, and karst, and develop, update, improve, and publish data and maps for depth to bedrock, recharge, discharge, aquifers, and so on, as well as provide information to the state for the implementation of the SNAP Plus program, map areas with high vulnerability to agriculture in a variety of pollutants. And this recommendation really works off of the LIDAR technology that Ellen and her staff had talked about earlier tonight, in terms of really utilizing that to detect where those sensitive areas are, and how as landowners we can, and citizens in our area, we can learn to better manage our lands in terms of how the water flows in our property within our county. The other piece in here, it talks about the SNAP Plus program. That is a electronic mapping tool that farmers use along with their nutrient management plans, which there is an element in there that's fairly new that Kewaunee County has now added depth to bedrock information in the mapping area, so farmers can can better use that tool to how they manage their land, and also whether it's spreading manure or other nutrients onto their land, can take that into account as well. So I think that is a good point to take a look at in terms of that recommendation. The next recommendation is develop a plan with the cost estimates for constructing another inset model for areas of interest and concern, which include conducting research to determine sources of nitrate issues and distinguishing between non-agricultural and agricultural pieces there. So this is taking a look at a further study of how groundwater flows within our county. This had been done, I believe, in the Roberts area, I think was where the first model had been done. And so this is an area where we look at, by knowing how the water flows, the water just doesn't always go down or flows south, that we have a better idea of how our water flows in our areas, especially in areas where there may be some of these sensitive areas in terms of maybe depth to bedrock and so on, and a better way for us to manage our resources in those areas. And in terms of non-agriculture and agriculture interests, that also looks at, we look at in terms of maybe residents who are managing their lawn and having good green lawns, but also golf courses, other businesses or entities that might, even schools that might have more green space, and how they can think about that as landowners as well. The next, and I think final recommendation, is to establish an active water quality committee to ensure that the protection of ground and surface water continues to be a priority issue that's actively addressed by the county. And so this is really taking a look at the work that had been directed by all of you about a year ago, and that we have been working on as a work study group, and looking at, a lot of our recommendations, as Tom had mentioned, are really things that can be done with maybe within the next year, short-term goals, but really looking at having a group that can take a look at, what's the progress and what are the next steps once we start to establish this baseline information, and taking a look at progress. And so this would be something that we would support in that area. And, that may, it's up to you as a board to take a look at it, but it may have a direct connection, obviously would have direct connections to the Community Development Committee, and have some relationship in that regard. So those would be our core recommendations to the county board in terms of the work that our water study group did. As Eric and Tom had mentioned, the report, the more in-depth report, which is a lot of probably good bedtime reading, will be coming shortly, and that will also outline a number of other recommendations that came forth from our board that aren't necessarily things that need to be acted on right now, but might be consideration for the board to take a look at in the future, and other areas that could be addressed down the road. So I guess I will turn it back over to the chair for if there's any questions or how you'd like to proceed at where we're at.
So we'll open for questions. Supervisor Anderson.
First of all, I want to thank you. I know you worked really hard and met twice a month and long meetings. But my question is, this all came about because of the application by the Emerald Dairy. Where does that lead with? Do they have is that application go forward, or what happens with that application for that increase in dairy for that CAFO?
that wouldn't have been a matter for the study group because we're just looking at the protection of groundwater. Where that fits in would not be for us.
So we don't know where that's at, okay.
Any other questions? Supervisor Peterson?
I'd actually just like to make a statement on the water well testing. It may look really complicated, but I've been involved in 2 tests, one with my own home, and it's really not that complicated. And you can get a test kit from the Ag Center. And if you're worried about your water, don't hesitate to have it tested. It's just some very common sense stuff to make sure you don't get false readings. So it's really not that bad.
It's not so much that it's complicated, but if we want to be scientifically credible, it's got to follow all those standards.
And I would also add too, I think part of this is also helping continue to educate our fellow citizens that it isn't that hard, and knowing information about your own water I think is the most important part. Ultimately, I think we want to have more information to know where we're at as a county, but yes, I'd agree.
Supervisor Peavy?
I just make a couple comments, quick. The people I talk to in the ag community, and I guess I'm the only one here that isn't, very disappointed that the last 2 meetings were not videoed. Everybody in my group that I know of was watching those, and at least they weren't available any place I saw. So that was disappointing to everybody. I think we got to keep in mind that to protect the private property rights of the individual. You're talking about sinkholes or depth of surface water, that's all private property. And we can't be thinking that we can just go out and do that and look for karst topography. Also have to keep in mind that any decision that comes out of this study can't be ruining the financial health of the small ag producer. Some of these ideas are great ideas, but the man with 30 cows or 400 acres can't afford a lot of these programs. So you got to keep that in mind. And last but not least, one of the comments made was bigger lot size. Remember, that is most of the farmers' 401k. That is their retirement. And if you start making bigger lots, you're taking away his financial well-being when it's time to retire. And I think we got to keep that in mind as we move forward. Thank you for all your work, though.
Supervisor Akhtarov?
Yeah, I commend the study group. You did a lot of work. I agree with basically every single thing. My concern is the finances. In order to get this done, was there any study at all about manpower / finances to do your core recommendations?
Absolutely. Cost projections were not made for any of them. We feel that's a matter that lies in the future. But in coming up with 8 recommendations out of 32, and actually what was many, many more, it was very much recognized that these are real recommendations with real consequences for budgeting, staffing, and other resources, either allocations or reallocations. Those decisions fall to this board.
Supervisor Schoberg?
In part in recognition of Supervisor Peavy's comments, I have to commend the citizen members of this group. They all came equally prepared as any of the county supervisors, if not more. I think Tom Zwald up there kind of stood as our encyclopedia of facts, and without their involvement, I don't think this recommendation would be worth anything. So it is the farming community that led this whole thing. We held off on a moratorium in response to the concerns of the farming community, and there were more farming community members on this study group than there were county supervisors. And so all those concerns you brought up, Supervisor Peavy, were acknowledged repeatedly, perhaps in the videos that you did see. And the last couple sessions, we apologize that they weren't taped. I think that was just because we were just talking amongst ourselves as to what to make of things, but I suppose that would have been interesting to some people. It probably would have been interesting to me if I wasn't living in a city with purified water to drink. And I want to respond to the people that stepped forward with their public comments about just keep the water safe. That was our overarching goal. We were supposed to be responsible for surface water. We were supposed to be responsible for a number of other things, and we just broke it all the way down to having each farmer, each rural resident be able to drink the water that comes out of their well. And to that, it's up to the board now to decide of these recommendations, what can we accomplish and when. But for, again, the citizen members, hats off to you, and I acknowledge the efforts of Bob Long and Agnes, who are also members and met all those times. And all good, productive time. Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions. Supervisor Berkey.
I just wanted to point out that, as Eric noted, this is an abbreviation, the core recommendations from a really long, extensive document that when the group got together the last time, that's still being worked on, and I assume that that will be available to all the county board members, and certainly it'll be a public document. And my question would be, the committee, an ongoing committee, which I know will be made up of some county board members and also a citizen member or so, will continue. And so there's a lot more work to do. And that's an important piece.
Any other discussion or questions? If not, Supervisor Schoberg.
So I would recommend that the board accept the presentation and also accept the recommendations for further action to be decided at a future date.
We have a second. Supervisor Anderson. Any discussion? There's no discussion. Do you have that up there yet, Cindy? While we're waiting on that, I want to thank Eric for his chairing that and facilitating it, and the whole committee. They did an excellent job. I think I missed one meeting through the whole thing, but they all had a lot of comments, and they did a good job. The supervisors that were on there and the backup supervisors did a real good job, so we always had somebody present all the time. Thank you very much for everything you did on that whole project. And now we're ready to vote on this. All yeses and one no, so it passes. Thank you for bringing that forward for us. We'll move on to number 3 here. Town of Hudson ordinance update. And who wants to? Here we go.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and County Board members. My name is John Hilders, planner with the Community Development Department. And before you tonight is a ordinance relating to a rezoning request in the town of Hudson, specifically at 576 Hermes Road. The request is to rezone a parcel 8 acres in size from commercial to an industrial zoning designation. The purpose of the rezoning is to facilitate a panelization facility, and this is where pre-built walls are built and assembled for new home construction and delivered to construction sites. In July and August of this year, the town of Hudson went through their process and public hearing processes and approved the request. According to state statute, the St. Croix County Board must approve rezoning requests even if it's in a town without county zoning. On September 21st, the Community Development Committee reviewed this request and recommends approval to the county board tonight.
I would move for its adoption.
Okay, second from Supervisor Nelson. So now it's open for discussion. No questions? No discussion? What? If there's no questions, then it's time to vote on that. That was all yeses. Thank you. So we can move forward. Our next one is the Town of Troy ordinance update.
Mr. Chair and board members, similarly, we have a rezoning request in the town of Troy, located at 888 Cooley Trail on your overview map shown above. This parcel is located just east of County Road U on 90th Street within the town of Troy. The request is to rezone the parcel from exclusive agricultural to agricultural residential in order to create 2 new residential lots as part of a farm plan. The town of Troy discussed this request in July among the Planning Commission and the town board. Similarly, town of Troy does have their own zoning. However, the St. Croix County Board must approve the request. On September 21st, the Community Development Committee of the county reviewed the request and recommended approval to the county board.
Supervisor Berkey?
I move to adopt the Town of Troy ordinance update.
Okay, need a second. Supervisor Hanson, second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on this ordinance update. And that was all yeses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next business is a resolution authorized purchase of public lands. Supervisor Berkey.
I would move to place this on the table for adoption.
I have a second to that. Supervisor Coulter seconds that. Ellen, you want to give us some information, background on that?
I'll keep it brief.
Start the 3-minute clock.
Oh,
Oh, start the 3-minute clock.
Roger.
I had to say that. I have very good reasons for it. So I've been before you before, as you are aware, we had received as part of the St. Croix River crossing, all your nice new buttons. We received $2 million in St. Croix County to acquire lands for the mitigation of bluff line impacts of the new bridge. And also the Wisconsin DNR received $2 million and the town of St. Joseph received $500,000. And so far we have purchased land. We purchased the land for the new trailhead for the new St. Croix River Trail. We've purchased land on Bass Lake for a small park at the north end of Bass Lake, which is a great opportunity. And we purchased a piece of 52 acres on the St. Croix River, which we thought would be the most amazing piece we would ever be able to buy. And as a result of that being in a newspaper, I got another phone call one day, very similar to the phone call from our Eagle Scout, but it was from a gentleman in California who said, I just heard from somebody in St. Croix County that you guys bought some land. Would you like to buy ours? It's right next door. And I said, whoa, let's talk. And so as a result, it's been a long year plus that we've been working on this, but we have the ability that's been recommended by the administration committee to purchase 114 acres of land adjacent to the parcel that we already own on the St. Croix River. That would be another outstanding opportunity to utilize our funds to purchase land to create an even larger county park. I'll summarize it that simply and also remind you that a few months back you accepted $1.8 million from the Department of Natural Resources, from Wisconsin DNR, that was part of their $2 million that they are contributing to us towards this purchase. So we're taking the money that we have, which not all of it, but most of it that's left, of about $1 million, and $1.8 million from the DNR, and we've also applied for a $400,000 grant, stewardship grant. Putting that all together would allow us to buy this 114 acres on the St. Croix for $3.2 million. So if you'd like me to go through the PowerPoint or give much greater detail, I would be happy to do so, but I will leave it at that and say that this is another very rare opportunity, totally unexpected. This parcel is wonderful. There's lots of pictures in here for you to look at. It has approximately 25 endangered species identified on it. It has a hardwater springs, several of them on the property. There's old growth oak, elm, and other central hardwoods, so it's a very rare and special piece. And hopefully you will support this acquisition.
Thank you, Ellen. Is there any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve.
You did?
Who seconded?
Or Coulter.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, no discussion, it's time to vote.
Did it work?
And that's all yeses, thank you. Number 6 on our list is a resolution approving alterations of supervisory district boundaries, City of Richmond, Town of Stanton. I have a motion to approve that.
Okay.
Supervisor Nelson, second by Supervisor Brinkman. Discussion on that, who wants? Don't need any discussion. So if there's no discussion, we have a motion and a second. It's time to vote.
My pen is broken. Oh, no, now it's gonna work. Oh, I fixed it. Magic.
And that was all yeses. Thank you. We have another resolution
Might be.
approving the alteration of supervisory district boundary, City of Richmond.
People are still hanging out.
Is that a motion?
Motion by Supervisor Brinkman, second by
Yay,
Supervisor
Andy.
Nelson.
Way to go.
Oh, Hanson, excuse me. Is there any discussion? Let's get
Is it a field or a barn?
the second up there.
Oh, really?
Okay, motion second. Any discussion? Not seeing any, we'll vote on that.
Oh, there you go. Andy,
One no, the rest yeses.
wait a minute.
Huh.
He said he was going to.
Request for future agenda items.
Okay, did he mean to do that?
Anybody have any future agenda items they would like to bring forward at this time? Otherwise, you can bring them forward anytime to Cindy, myself, or Pat.
Did he mean to not support?
Not seeing any.
This is the rain joke.
We'll move forward. County Clerk's report. And nothing there. Any announcements? Supervisor Nelson.
Tomorrow, 9:30, there's a drug court graduation. I forgot which courtroom it is, but it's 9:30.
Yep. Okay. Supervisor Peavy?
Yeah, I would like to follow up. Back in May, I requested some follow-up on a public health ordinance, and it was going to get referred back, and I think our bylaw says that should be done within 60 days, and it'll be November now, and we haven't done that, so I'd like to follow up, get some follow-up on that.
Okay, we'll see if we can handle that. Get back to committee and see what's happening there. Anything else? Any other announcements? Not Supervisor Berkey?
I already made the announcement, but I better do it underneath announcements. Everybody has this bulletin for the October 14th Oktoberfest, and all the proceeds will go to the Friends of the St. Croix County Fairgrounds at Gibby's in New Richmond.
Okay. Not seeing anything else. Thank you, everyone, and meeting's adjourned.